Hey y'all, Angel Audio here. I missed last week because I was super duper sick. I know no one really watches me yet, but just in case someone ever looked back and went, wow, this video is missing. Weird. It's because there's not that one. Because I got sick. I got an upper respiratory infection and I felt like I was dying and I couldn't move. So we just kind of didn't do it. And also I wasn't too excited about it. I don't know. I'm not that fond of Thanksgiving. I like the food aspect of it, but that's about it. I like food and getting like 2 days off of work because they have to give it to me. Christmas, however, I like way more. I like decorating, and I like food, and I like getting presents for my family, and I like people being like excited with the stuff that you get them, and just the excitement and the vibes all around. I don't care about Christianity, but I do care about presents for people and excitement, and it's great, So, excited for Christmas. I figured we'd do a few interesting things, like some true crime stuff that's happened around Christmas. And then I know I want to do Krampus one week. Thinking about maybe doing like the actual like pagan where Christmas stuff came from, But we'll see. Right now I'm gonna read you a thing about the Santa robberies. A man dressed up as Santa and robbed a bank because why not crush people's dreams? Also while giving other people good things, because like if you rob a bank, it's probably gonna be a real good Christmas for you if you don't get caught. Like that's a pretty dang great. But oh my god, the Cuphead show has an album? I didn't know that. I'm probably gonna listen to that in a bit. You got me, Cuphead show. Anyway, so anyway, this happened in Texas. Of course it did. Texas is the most randomest place ever. But the Santa Claus bank robbery occurred on December 23rd, 1927 in the central Texas town of Cisco. Marshall Radcliffe, dressed as Santa Claus, along with Henry Helms and Robert Hill, all ex-cons, and Lewis Davis, a relative of Helms, held up the First National Bank in Cisco. The robbery is one of Texas's most infamous crimes, having evoked the largest manhunt ever seen in the state. Eyewitness Boyce House wrote that this was the most spectacular crime in the history of the Southwest, surpassing any in which Billy the Kid or the James Boys had ever figured. Which I think is pretty impressive, because Billy the Kid, guys, like, he's one of the biggest criminals, and they weren't even sure if they for sure killed him for a while. I mean, he's definitely dead now, but, like, they didn't know if he was dead or not. Which is pretty cool. I would like if people didn't know if I was dead or not. Anyway, so I'm gonna put up the image, but apparently they used this specific picture of Santa to try to, like, get the manhunt going and everything, and I think that's hilarious. They're just like, put up this little rosy motherfucker, hopefully people come and help us find this criminal. Anyway, so here's some background on some of the people and everything that were involved. But, so, happened in Cisco, Texas, obviously. Marshall Radcliffe was an ex-con who had lived in Cisco before being tracked down and imprisoned for a bank robbery in Valera, Texas, by Cisco Chief of Police G.E. Bedford. Okay, so, like, these guys were like, we like robbing banks, we'll try it again. First up, if it doesn't succeed at one point, then maybe just don't rob a bank again. Though Radcliffe was given a long prison sentence, he had been paroled just before the infamous bank robbery. He initially planned to rob the Cisco bank with his brother Lee, but Lee had been arrested again. Ratcliffe pulled in Helms and Hill, whom he knew from Huntsville, and a fourth man who was good with safes. Wow. He was like, it was going to be a family affair, it was going to be a great Christmas. But, he got arrested. That's great of him. Brother's always getting arrested. I think I'm hilarious. I'm still a little sick. Okay. Anyway, so planning for the robbery. As they planned the crime in Wichita Falls, hey, I used to go to Wichita Falls when I went to my grandma's house. The safecracker came down with the flu, and the trio pulled in Davis, a relative of the Helms, and a family man in need, promising a large return for its participation. During this period in Texas, 3 or 4 banks were being robbed every day, and in response, the Texas Bankers Association had offered a $5,000 reward to anyone shooting a bank robber during the crime. You could get a lot of money to shoot somebody. Also, wow, that is a lot of bank robberies. They had a serious problem. Jesus. In addition, Radcliffe knew that he would be immediately recognized if he returned to Cisco. This made the heist a particularly dangerous undertaking for the 4 men, so Radcliffe decided to conceal his identity by disguising himself as Santa Claus. Such a disguise would also allay any suspicions by people in the bank. Stealing a car in Wichita Falls, they headed for Cisco and arrived on the morning of December 23rd. As the group neared the bank, Radcliffe donned a Santa Claus suit he had borrowed from Miss Midge Tillett, who ran the boarding house where they had been staying in Wichita Falls. They let Radcliffe out several blocks from the bank. Radcliffe, dressed as Santa, was smiling as he came along Avenue D, the main street, stopping to chat with eager children, answering their questions, and patting them on the head. The main street of Cisco was crowded with people going about their daily activities. The town had the normal decorations for the season. Everyone was in the Christmas spirit, so no one thought it odd when Santa came walking down the street around noon, one day before Christmas Eve. Still followed by children attracted to Santa, Radcliffe joined the other 3 in the alley and led the way to the bank. Some of the happy children who followed Santa continued into the bank. The bank after him. Can you imagine just, I saw Santa, we're doing great. Also, that makes more sense that he donned the Santa outfit. It was more of a disguise, and obviously who suspects Santa of robbery, but the point, he was being so friendly. He was like, hey, guys, of course Santa's coming to town. If you've been good, hope you're not on the naughty list because I'll rob your family if you are. That's just, it works. It gets you what you need. It's fine. Once inside, Radcliffe received a pleasant greeting of, hello, Santa, from the cashier. He did not respond, but walked to a desk in the middle of the lobby where bank customers wrote out their deposit slips. A few customers were already at the teller's window making their deposits. The cashier again called out, hello, Santa. Again, no response. Right about this point, Radcliffe's accomplice Robert Hill entered the bank, pointed a pistol at the cashier, and snarled, hands up. The second bandit, Henry Helms, also entered brandishing a gun, followed by the 3rd armed man, Davis. Radcliffe pushed through a swinging door, past the cashier's desk, went into the cashier's cage, opened a drawer under the counter, and removed a pistol from that location, stuffing it under his red Santa suit. Now, 4 men were armed, including Santa Claus. Santa has a gun. Santa has a gun, and if you're on the naughty list, you're getting shot. Santa ordered the assistant cashier to open the safe and began stuffing money and bonds into a sack he had hidden beneath his costume. While the others covered the customers and their employees, Radcliffe grabbed money from the tellers and forced one to open the vault. Unseen by the 4 robbers, bank patron Mrs. B.P. Blassingame and her 6-year-old daughter Frances entered the bank in hopes of seeing Santa, not knowing a robbery was in progress. Immediately realizing the danger, Miss Blassingame charged her way with her daughter through the bookkeeping office of the bank, announcing, they are robbing the bank, and she reached for the door to the alley. She quickly unlocked the door, thrusting her daughter onto the alley while yelling at her to run, and despite warnings from the robbers that they would shoot, escaping herself. She screamed for help as she ran the 1 block to City Hall and the police department, alerting Chief of the Police Bedford and most of the Cisco citizenry about the robbery. I can't. This lady's just like, of course I'm going to bring my daughter to see Santa. Everyone saw Santa go into this bank. It's such a good time. We're going to get photos. And she's going to tell him about what she wants because I still haven't bought her present, even though it's like the day before Christmas Eve. And I need ideas. Santa, please. And then Santa's, of course, trying to murder some people. It's fine. According to an eyewitness, Boy's House Police Chief G.E. Bedford was a giant of a man and a veteran peace officer. Seizing a riot gun, he started for the scene and instructed officers R.T. Reddies and George Carmichael to cover the back door of the bank. The chief posted himself at the alley, which ran alongside the bank and opened at the bank's front on Avenue D, while Officer Carmichael took a position near another alley, which ran behind the bank and intersected the first. Meanwhile, inside the bank, one of the men with an automatic weapon in each hand growled at the bookkeeper, "Don't look at me." But this time, Santa Claus had filled his sack and exited the vault. Who fired the first shot is uncertain. Some sources state Radcliffe, dressed as Santa, fired first, the bullet striking the bank's plate glass window, possibly to signal unseen accomplices that the robbery had been accomplished. Other sources say that Hill, seeing someone outside, fired a shot through the window, and a shot was returned, prompting Hill to fire several more shots into the ceiling to show that they were armed. Immediately, Bedford and Carmichael directed crossfire at the side door, and the two-gunned robber fired back, first at Carmichael and then at Bedford. Jesus Christ, can you just imagine just Santa's in a shootout? I don't know. Something about, I feel like he could have, like, I don't know if the Grinch was a thing back then whenever this happened, but you could have at least done Krampus. You could have been Krampus, but no. Santa's doing a shootout. Santa's robbing the bank. Just feel like they could have maybe planned it a little better. A full assault of gunfire began, as many civilians who owned guns were now outside of the bank, and many more had rushed to the hardware stores for pistols and rifles. The assistant postmaster and the postmaster were two of the civilians who took up arms against the robbers. They opened fire, and a rifle bullet struck one of the fugitives in the arm and spun him around. A bullet also struck a cashier in the jaw, and another struck a bank customer in the leg. One customer made a run for it, and was able to tell Bedford and Carmichael about the hostages. The robbers forced all the people in the bank out the door and towards their blue sedan. Several of these hostages were wounded as they emerged into the alley, including Alex Spears, the bank president. Most of the customers escaped, however. The robbers kept as hostages two little girls, Laverne Comer and Emma Mae Robertson. Oh my gosh, that's exactly how someone spells their name. Okay. Using the girls as shields, the four made their way into the alley to their getaway car. More than 100 shots had already been fired before their shootout, and the alley where the robbers returned to their getaway car. In the alley, Chief Bedford and Deputy George Carmichael were mortally wounded. Officer Carmichael found himself reeling from the bullet that had been fired from one of the robbers' guns. Officer Reeds, who had witnessed his partner being shot, went to him to assist in any way he could. As Reeds dodged the robbers' gunfire, the four made their way to the getaway car. As the head of the alley, Police Chief Bedford stood in their way. In the exchange of fire, Chief Bedford, who had been a peace officer in the area for some 25 years, was shot 5 times. Jesus. Bedford died several hours later on Christmas Day, and Carmichael died almost a month later on January 17th. Hey, at least Carmichael didn't die on Christmas. 6 other civilians were wounded. Davis was severely wounded in the shootout, while Radcliffe suffered from 2 wounds, one in the chin and one in the leg. Ooh. Officer Rades ran into the police station and retrieved a rifle and began to pursue the robbers on foot. He was soon picked up and continued the pursuit with a civilian. This feels very unprofessional. Where are your cop cars? Why do you guys not have cop cars to chase these people? As the four robbers began their getaway traveling south on Avenue D with their hostages, they realized that they were almost out of gas, having forgotten to fill the tank beforehand. You idiots. You're robbing. You maybe think about filling your tank. They're gonna chase you. You robbed a bank as Santa. As they neared the edge of town, pursued by the mob, one of their tires was flattened by a shot from law enforcement. The robbers lurched out of the vehicle, brandishing their guns, to commander a passing out Oldsmobile driven by a 14-year-old Woodrow Wilson Harris, who relinquished the car. The robbers transferred the loot, hostages, and injured comrade to the Oldsmobile in the midst of a gunfire. When they had finally transferred themselves to the new getaway car, only then did they realize that they could not start the car because Harris had cleverly taken the keys from the ignition when ordered to stop. Davis was by then unconscious, so they left him in the car and moved back to the first car with their two hostages. Robert Hill, the one who had followed Ratcliffe into the bank, was struck by a rifle bullet during the aborted transfer to Harris's car. They did not realize until later that they had left the money in the Oldsmobile with Davis. You idiots! Why? Oh, you... You're so bad at robbery. You guys come in, traumatize some children, and then fail at your job. At least be a good robber if you're gonna completely ruin Santa for people. Come on. The mob found Davis and the money and temporarily gave up the chase. The money was returned to the bank. They had stolen $12,400 in cash and $150,000 in non-negotiable securities. Estimates were made that at least 200 bullet holes were made in the bank, a number which many thought too low. Besides the two police officers, 6 townspeople had been wounded in the shootout, but no one was sure whether the robbers or the mob members were responsible. For Davis, who was a last-minute replacement for the group, this was the only crime in his lifetime. He had taken to a Fort Worth hospital after his capture, but efforts to save his life failed. He died from bullet wounds he received in the gun battle at the bank. These idiots brought a newbie to rob a bank, and he died because they're so stupid. Oh my god. They're like, this is so good. It's better than Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid knows, well, I guess back in Billy's day, they kind of announced who they were whenever they robbed banks and stuff. But, Billy the Kid did better than this. Come on. The trio had raced back out onto Avenue D, 2 of the desperados firing back at the automobile filled with pursuers. The driver swung east into a dirt road, and his companions began throwing out roofing nails in an effort to puncture the tire of the posse's machines. He then turned into a pasture, dashing through cactus, mesquite, and scrub oak. The growth became so heavy that further progress was impossible, and the robbers abandoned their bullet-riddled car and the 2 hostages several miles from town and continued on foot. Sheriff John Hart and his deputies of Eastland, the county seat, had been called by long distance and given the news of the bank robbery. They piled into automobiles and sped to the spot where the bandits had abandoned the car. Reporters, including Boyce House, followed the action in another vehicle by House's account. Officers and citizens poured in from all the section of the state, and such a manhunt as Western Texas had never seen before was soon in progress. Many members of the posse were on horseback or on foot as they beat their way through the clumps of trees, searched high grass in the bottoms of ravines, and peered around boulders and canyons. One search party discovered an overcoat and blood-stained gloves. Later citizens found a suitcase and a pile of blood-stained rags. In the suitcase were cotton and gauze, showing that the bandits had entered their enterprise with the knowledge that there might be shedding of blood. Despite the search efforts, the bandits were able to evade search parties and steal another car the next morning. The pursuit continued throughout Saturday and Saturday night. One of the results of the Yuletide crime was tragic implications for little children in Eastland County. On Christmas Eve, a church in Eastland was filled, and as Jolly St. Nicholas entered, a little boy called out, in a quavered voice, "Santa Claus, why did you rob that bank?" Jesus Christ. I knew it. I was like, some kid's gonna be over there like, Santa's a bad person. And now he's gonna be traumatized for life. And these kids probably for the rest of their lives were like, Santa robbed a bank. So I don't think he can tell me whether I'm good or not. Give me my toy car, you fat mother. No, I'm joking. They probably didn't. They didn't go that far, but they were also probably very confused children. Jesus. When the bandits wrecked their car in Putnam, they then successfully commandeered a vehicle driven by Carl Wiley, a young driller, forcing him as their hostage to drive. During the seizure, Mr. Wiley's father fired a shotgun after the fleeing car. The shot struck his son. Jesus! Everybody sucks in this. After hiding out all night with nothing to eat but oranges, which they did not offer to the injured young hostage, Helms Hill and Radcliffe decided to return to Cisco to hide in plain sight. They released Wiley and his car and stole another. The wounded bandits, especially Radcliffe, were doing very poorly due to their injuries, lack of food, and the icy, sleeting conditions. The threesome was ambushed the next morning by Sheriff Foster in the Brazos River. Officers spotted this single-seated machine with 3 occupants approaching. The driver caught sight of a gun in the hands of one of the officers and began backing rapidly down the road. Then, as the members of the posse scurried into their automobiles, the car whirled and rushed away. A car chase followed, with a shootout in the oil field as the 3 tried to escape. Running towards the wells, involved in the firefight was Deputy Sheriff Cy Bradford, famous for bringing law and order into the coal fields of Strawn and the neighboring towns, and later as a Texas Ranger during the turbulent oil days. His career was filled with gunfights, in which Bradford's cool-headedness and marksmanship always brought him out the victor. Before Bradford's car had rolled to a stop, he was out with old Betsy, his double-barreled shotgun, and an extra pair of shells in one hand. Bradford fired again, and one of the fugitives fell. Bradford reloaded before firing again. "I did not want to be caught with an empty gun if they turned and made a stand," he explained afterwards. The bandits ran on, firing back over their shoulders. Again Bradford shot, and the man went down, but arose and staggered on. Why wouldn't they go down? The officer shoved the other shell into the gun and shot again, and the third desperado slumped to his knees, but got up and reeled on, disappearing among the derricks. Radcliffe was it, and fell to the ground, while Helms and Hill, although wounded, escaped into the woods by the Brazos River, which offered ideal concealment. Radcliffe was reportedly a walking arsenal, bearing no fewer than 6 gunshot wounds with 6 pistols when captured, including the one he took from the bank. Santa had been caught. Oh my god. These guys seriously wouldn't go down. They're like, that one got shot, and so he went down, but then he got up and he ran. And this one got shot, so he went down, but then he got up and he ran. Like that. At least they're persistent. They've been so stupid this entire time, but they're persistent and they're hardy, and they'll attempt to survive, man. The intense manhunt for Helms and Hill, directed by Ranger Captain Tom Hickman, pressed on so as not to allow the wounded men an opportunity to rest. Despite airplane assistance, the search team could not spot the fleeing men. In the process, 2 more men were wounded from accidental discharge of their weapons. You idiots. Bringing the total number of wounded to 8, excluding the 3 surviving robbers. However, their trail was eventually picked up, and the end of the chase evidently was not far, because the footprints were close-spaced, showing that they were wearing from the long chase and weak from loss of blood. Yeah, they've been shot so many times. Marks showed that to climb even a small rise, they had been forced to crawl, and were finally apprehended in Graham, Texas, on December 30th, 7 days after the bank robbery. They had been attempting to find the location of a rooming house in Graham, but the man from whom they asked directions noticed their pistols and notified the authorities. Presumably exhausted, the two were taken into custody without a fight. Hill was captured with 3 pistols and Helms with 4. Though Helms, Hill, and Radcliffe had several wounds apiece and had not eaten for days, all 3 survived and faced trials. Helms was second to stand trial after Radcliffe. He was identified as the one who had gunned down both lawmen and was given the death sentence in late February. After an unsuccessful insanity plea, he was executed by electric chair on September 6, 1929, in Huntsville, Texas. He is said to have had cabbage, sausage, tomatoes, coffee, and pie for his last meal. That is such a weird thing to ask for as your last meal, but, you know, none of you were very smart. Hill was last to be tried. He pleaded guilty to armed robbery and took the stand on his own behalf, crying for mercy and citing his unhappy childhood. In March, he was given a sentence of life imprisonment, 99 years. He escaped from prison 3 times, but was recaptured each time. After settling down, he was paroled in the mid-1940s, reportedly changed his name, and became a productive citizen. Hill passed away in 1996. I mean, at least he finally made something of himself after all of that. Radcliffe was convicted of armed robbery on January 27, 1928, and was also sentenced to 99 years in prison. Little 10-year-old Emma May Robinson's testimony identified Radcliffe as a man disguised as Santa Claus who had robbed the bank and kidnapped her. On the way to his cell, Radcliffe muttered, "That's no hill for a high-stepper like me." Months later, on March 3rd, he was sentenced to execution for his role in the deaths of Bradford and Carmichael. Although no one could testify to having seen Radcliffe dressed as Santa fire a gun from the bank, Radcliffe appealed his case, and when that failed, began behaving oddly in hopes of an insanity plea. He began acting insane the day of Helms' execution, much to the conviction of his jailers. His mother, Rilla Carter, filed for a lunacy hearing in Huntsville. Of course. They all want to be insane. Which, I mean, that would explain their stupidity from all of this. Oh my god. Why couldn't they have been smart about it at least? The civilians of Eastland County grew infuriated to learn Radcliffe had not already been executed for his deeds, and were further aggravated by this new development. Judge Davenport ordered Radcliffe to be extradited to Eastern County Jail, writing a bench warrant for armed robbery of the Harris Oldsmobile. On November 18th, while awaiting execution there, Radcliffe feigned paralysis, convincing his jailers, Pat Kilbourne and Tom A., Uncle Tom Jones, necessitating the two to feed and bathe him and take him to the toilet. Having duped the 2 jailers, the man who had played Santa managed to get a hold of a 6-shooter in an office desk, fatally wounding Jones and violently fighting the second jailer in hand-to-hand combat, sometimes shooting a few rounds that, fortunately for Kilbourne, missed their mark. Most of the town, including the fighting jailer's daughter, watched helplessly through the jail windows. Unable to break open the steel door to help Kilbourne as he pinned Radcliffe down, beat him into consciousness, and then returned him to his cell. Santa, stay down. Jesus Christ. This man, oh my god, no wonder they're like, oh, it's amazing. Look at this weird case. No one talked about it. I haven't heard of Santa robbing anything, and now I hear that he has, and he's so stupid and so amazing at the same time. A crowd began to gather the next morning, and by nightfall had grown to nearly 2,000, all clamoring for Radcliffe. Kilbourne refused their demand, but was overpowered by 15 to 20 men who rushed in and dragged Radcliffe out. They tied his hands and feet, carrying him to a vacant lot behind the local Majestic Theater in Mulberry Street, where the play The Noose was being presented. There, they threw a rope over a guy wire between two telephone poles on which they intended to hang him. The first attempt failed when the knot came loose and he fell to the ground. The second time, however, they used a stronger rope and were successful. His last words were, "Forgive me, boys," before he was hoisted 15 feet in the air. He was pronounced dead 20 minutes later at 9:55 p.m. on November 19th. Some Eastland accountants have erected a marker and picket fence around the utility pole in the back of the Majestic Theater on Mulberry Street. Although this marker may or may not be the actual pole, Jones died that evening, being the total number of dead as a result of Santa Claus bank robbery, including 3 bank robbers, to 6. No one was ever tried in association with the lynching, although a grand jury was formed. Several thousand persons viewed Radcliffe's body the next day at a furniture store in Eastland before Judge Garrett ordered the corpse locked up. Radcliffe's family took possession of the body and arranged for a funeral in Fort Worth, where burial at Olivet Cemetery. Many people in Cisco over the years have claimed to have been present at the robbery or related to someone who was, and it is now part of local folklore. The greatest manhunt in the history of West Texas had ended, and the most celebrated of all the trials ever held in Eastland District Court's old courthouse was also the last. At the end of this trial, the building was demolished. The First National Bank still stands in Cisco, although it is in a new building. It features a painting of the robbery, as well as a collection of newspaper clippings and a picture of those involved. In 1967, the Texas State Historical Survey Committee, now the Texas Historical Commission, placed the medallion on the bank commemorating the robbery. Oh my god. They always make it out, like, so bad, like, I saw a mom kissing Santa Claus, and you're like, oh my god, Santa, how could you? Or, Grandma got ran over by a reindeer, and they're like, Santa ran over Grandma, how could he do this terrible thing? But, this Santa robbed people. They robbed a bank and killed people. Well, I don't know if I think his buddy was the one that did the actual killing, but oh my god, those kids are probably traumatized forever, and this place, they're like, wow, our thing we're famous for that no one really even knows happened is the Santa robbery. My god. Ugh, I love it. I love it. I'm so sorry so many people died, and I'm so sorry they suck. Oh my god. Okay, so, he already was a criminal, and then he's like, you know what? I'm at this place, and they have a Santa costume. I'll just take the Santa costume so I can rob the same place, or rob the same town that I've already robbed, and they won't recognize me. Let me just greet all these children. And then, when people are nice to me and say, hi, Santa, let me just go behind the desk and start robbing them instead. Let me take these 2 girls hostage. Let me fail to even fill up a gas tank. And then fail to transfer over my injured friend and the money that I robbed this place for. They didn't accomplish anything. No one got money. No one even survived. Well, I guess that one dude did survive for a while. Good on him. But, like, it was so pointless. They traumatized so many people and killed some people for no reason. Like, they're just bad at what they do. I mean, I think that's, I don't know. I guess I don't plan on murder or robbing a bank anytime. But I feel like there's a checklist you should maybe do. Like, make sure you have gas in the getaway car. Can you imagine? They're like on E, and they're just over there, hold on, let's see if we can throw them. Also, did like very few people have cop cars? Why were they like running after them on foot or like getting into civilians' cars? I understand the criminals getting into civilians' cars because they're crazy and like, stupid. But why did some of the cops get in civilian cars? That's so stupid. Why was everybody bad at their job? And why did that one guy choose weird food to eat for his last meal? Maybe they didn't really give him a choice. Maybe they're just like, this is what we have in the thing. Don't live. I don't know. Also, I like how all of them were like, insanity plea, and they're like, yeah, you might be a little insane for trying this, but you for sure are sane enough to stand trial. You're fucking idiot. Be smart if you're gonna rob something. Come on. Actually, usually if you're robbing something, you're not that smart, but unless you're one of those super cool spies, I think, they're probably smart. They also usually don't get caught, and they don't not have gas in the getaway vehicle. God dang. They also usually don't dress up as Santa. God. I don't know. I think it's good. I think it's great. Anyway, I think that's a good way to start off the Christmas season. This story was a lot better than what I thought it was gonna be. I was like, okay, some dude who robbed a bank as Santa. How, like, that's interesting, I guess, but, you know, what really can you get from that? And then it kept going. It just kept going, and it was amazing. Anyway, I hope y'all have a good start to your December. I hope all of you stay safe and stay healthy. Everybody's getting sick. Like, so many kids were sick at my job, and so were so many of us teachers. But, stay safe. Don't be stupid if you rob a bank. Don't rob a bank. But also don't be bad at it if you're gonna do it. Come on. Happy holidays. Have a nice night. Or days. Have a nice something.